Welcome to Courageous Conviction. Remember that Jeff and I record each Saturday 5 episodes. So please hit the like button, subscribe so you catch all 5 episodes. We usually start out with one theme or topic. We have to go down a lot of rabbit holes to really understand it. Some things are more sensitive than others right now, what's going on in the world. So hit the like button, subscribe, and let's jump into this video.
Dutch national disgrace and dubbed climate pope Frans Timmermans already stated in 2015 that diversity is humanity's destiny and that Europe will be diverse.
Let's stop there for
and
a minute,
of course,
Walter.
by now, I think we all
Let's talk about that whole idea of diversity. I know we hear that in the church too, that diversity is beautiful. That's a Marxist slogan that's penetrating, crept into the church, that somehow has kind of established itself as almost doctrinal, that we need to be diverse. Now, understanding this, that we know from Brigham Young that the tent of Zion, and I want to make this clear right now, the gathering of Zion that's going on, that you hear spoken about in General Conference, and the stakes of Zion, is that of bringing in members, baptizing people, bringing them in and getting them on that covenant path. That is the gathering going on in the stakes. But the tent of Zion, which is a whole different gathering, would be that of different nationalities. And that I know for a fact. And so that I can understand why there's so many people coming to America today, because this is where the tent of Zion is going to be established. We know that. Missouri is going to be the New Jerusalem, and that's going to be the base point. And the center, the new capital, if you will, of church headquarters will be there. So even, the rhetoric we hear and the speech we hear about staying home and being in your own communities and your own states, even Utah and the leadership of the church will move to a safer place because things will get that bad eventually. That's prophecy. We know that. We can do a lot of research on that from both Joseph, Brigham, and others. Now, what we face here is the challenge of this great replacement. And they do it under the guise of humanitarian purposes, right? The Ecuadorian people, and I'm just going to say this for Ecuadorian people, and I have my best friends are there. So I can say this because I've lived amongst them for a number of years. I can say that with Latinos in general, of my studies, and I've lived in 4 Latin countries for 20 years of my life. I have a good understanding of this, and I'm not trying to be biased in any way, shape, or form. I'm just using my studies, because I spent 25 years studying why the cultures, principally cultures of Latin America or in the Americas, why they collapsed, what caused them to collapse. And I'm just going to say this much. The common thread that I found, even when I studied abroad in other countries to try to do some comparisons and look for different traces of the whole Middle Eastern area, the area where Lehi's people could have come from, try to connect those more with what I was finding here. I need to go there to get familiar with their ruins there and how they built and styles they built to be able to see things here. So with that in mind, one thing I found was that the centralized states, they collapsed much sooner and easier than did a decentralized state. Now, you can take the Maya, for example. They were a decentralized group of city-states, right? And they were independent of themselves, and yet also had intercommerce and so forth. A lot like the United States today, which is kind of ironic, I think. But they were a lot kind of like that today, where they had their independence, and they should have their independence. Then they just kind of had an overriding understanding amongst them. Now, there were sanctions or divisions between them, and they warred against each other, etc. And we can go into the history of the Maya another time. However, they were very difficult for the Spaniards to conquer because they were a decentralized city-state nation, if you will. Keep that in mind as we go forward. Let's go ahead now with the video. Walter.
Know what they mean with the word diversity. It means less white people, less of you. Imagine this in an Asian or an African country. Imagine their leaders rejoicing in the fact that their people will soon no longer be a majority in their own country. Absolutely unthinkable, unimaginable.
For a minute, Walter. I
So
want to talk
what
about
in
this.
the world is
So what in the world is wrong? You're right. See, diversity is this catchphrase, and I meant to finish on that. Diversity is actually not a good thing. What happens is diversity causes chaos and the collapse of culture. And when you collapse the culture, you collapse the constitution of that culture, and therefore the direction, that northbound direction, if you would, that direction of progress, is wiped out with diversity. Where's diversity good? Well, I know people coming here to America, and Latinos and natives, right? The definite Lamanite descendants. We have to understand that too, that in Latin America, just because they come from Latin America does not make them a Lamanite descendant. You have European blood that stayed pure European blood. Now, I would say probably a great majority of them have some Lamanite or native blood mixed in with them, but that's not true for all of them, especially certain areas of them. You can go down and see where groups, even Germans, have formed, and they still keep a pure blood amongst them in their little pocket, in their little area, because they do so out of an effort that they make to remain that pure, and influence that they have in their children to maintain their culture. In southern Brazil, you can find the German populations, for the most part, they remain still white, blonde hair, blue-eyed, and light-skinned, right? So a lot of them stay within their own culture. Now, I'm not saying we have to do that. I definitely have married outside of my culture, but I had to find somebody that was outside of my culture too, that also had agreed with the understanding of the Constitution, the northbound direction that we were going to walk. And that becomes difficult because even with amongst ourselves, with my wife now, it becomes difficult in times of raising our children because of our cultural differences. We have to work through that. It's not an easy thing. And it sometimes can be beautiful and sometimes it can be very ugly. So contrary to what we've heard across the pulpit about that, it's not easy, and it should not really be something that's promoted, because marriage in and of itself and family in itself, the attack it has now is really difficult as it is. When you bring in another culture to it, it makes it even more difficult. And if you get, we continue to go this way, the culture, what happens, look at my children, for example. I was married before, and before I went to Latin America, and that was just two from my former wife, and we have a great relationship today, and I'm grateful for that. I truly am. In fact, we just had lunch yesterday, all of us did, and it was nice. But look at my children. If you can look at my children, you're going to find in the two that were born to my Latin wife, and she's very darker skinned, Latina. But if you look at my children, you're going to see that one of my son, he definitely looks Latin. He's darker skinned. And my daughter, she's a little bit lighter skinned, but she's still got that olive complexion, and she's got Latin. So what's happening with my generation then is the whiteness is being browned out. Now, I did that on my own free will, my own choice. One was, and I'm going to say this, ladies, because I couldn't find ladies here in America that just really, to me, enough of them to be able to find one to wife that I liked, that still was feminine and wanted to have the long hair and take care of herself and wear the heels, and also be able to throw on the boots and go out and go fishing with me and things of that nature. Believe it or not, I went outside the country to find that. Now, can you find that here? Yes. But where I'm at, it's a blue state, and it's a lot less finding that, and finding somebody also who believes in traditional family values. That's the core why many men go out of the country to find wives these days. So I want to say this, diversity. When we look at diversity, now we have this Latin culture here, right? It makes it difficult. They come to church, for example, they speak no English, so they're sitting in Spanish. Well, what's going to take place now is resources are going to be made to help them facilitate the church meetings in Spanish language. Now, I'm not complaining about that because, I didn't ask for that to be done in English when I went to Latin America. I learned their language, right? And so, when people come here and they don't try to even learn the language, it takes away from resources, and it makes causes an issue that is another ripple, if you will, that needs to be dealt with in society in general, and even in church, right? And then I've saw the society as Americans came and visited and so forth, but they just expect you to learn their language like should be expected here. So diversity can bring in diversity of language. And we saw what happened in the Tower of Babel. It led to confusion and chaos. So where in diversity is the beauty? And if you want to, please comment down below. Show me what you think. Tell me what you think, but prove that. I don't want opinions. Okay, there's a lot of people want to give us opinions out there. And I don't really care about opinions. Like my dad used to say, opinions like fannies, you know. Everybody has one. But it doesn't mean anything. Put some empirical data behind it. And let's look at this from a real point of view. How do we deal with this in reality and not just with our feelings and emotions? We should never make decisions on feelings and emotions, though we do many times. Sometimes we confuse that being the spirit because we want it to be that way. I'm watching something take place here right now in my household like that, and it's concerning to me. But you know, she has her ability to make her own decisions, and therefore, if she wants to make them out of feelings and emotions, then go for it. But you know, good luck with that, because that usually comes back to bite us if we're not sound in our decision-making process, using the spirit to guide us, if we will, right? So diversity then is very, very touchy situation. And we need to be careful because that's a neo-Marxist slogan that's penetrated the church, has penetrated society, that we need to be diverse. This is great. The consequence of diversity, though, is the annihilation of a society, of a culture. Why are people coming here? Apparently, because it's a better culture. It's a higher standard, but yet we're lowering those standards and we're going to diversify now our culture with those cultures that are fragmented and not working. And people want to come here and keep their culture and yet have the free handouts, not the rights, not the abilities to be able to provide for themselves in America that once the immigrants came here to do, but actually coming to take advantage of these social programs. And this is the invitation. This is the reality of it. So this diversity coming in and not wanting to integrate with the culture is not a good thing. Now I'm just going to give this example. I thank you for being with us on Courageous Conviction. Remember, there's 5 episodes each week that we put out. We have to go down a lot of rabbit holes, so stay with us, hit the thumbs up, subscribe, and don't miss tomorrow's episode on Courageous Conviction.